James Fox finally announces when his new movie is coming out. It's going to be streaming on a lot of different platforms. Good news, bad news, that we aren't going to get just one platform of where you're going to see it. Jeremy Corbell shoots down some rumors or footage of certain UAP that's going out there right now. There's a lot happening within Congress. There's tons of movement, maybe not. What the hell is going on since the hearing? So I'm not going to be doing it by myself here today. I have my buddy Patrick from Vetted on the show, and we're going to discuss all this and more on Down to Earth with me, Kristian Harloff, UAP Tuesday. Let's do it. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Coming straight out of a jazz club, I got Patrick from Vetted right here. You're doing good, man. I'm glad to have you on the show finally with some good audio. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Can everyone hear me? I just start lip syncing.
It's true.
Yeah, glad to be here, man. Excited to jump in on all this. To be honest with you.
Me too, because we talked briefly after the actual hearing. You were doing a stream. I did a stream. We both kind of felt the same. And I think the lead up, or I should say the aftermath, since then, I've come around in the idea that, look, this thing did get a lot of coverage. There were a lot of people who weren't paying attention to it that said, what was that all about? And then it seemed to you the same way it seems to me that Nancy Mace, who, yes, she was part of the first hearing, but she seems to be taking almost more of a role than even Tim Burchett and Luna are taking at this point.
Oh, I agree. Kind of touched on that a little bit on my show today, in fact, how Luna was really taking the forefront with Burchett, right, at the beginning after Grush testified and everything, right, and you had all this, and then to compare her reaction to this new hearing. She's sitting back. She's kind of 2/3 through the hearing, right? She doesn't give an opening statement. Mace was kind of a supporting character in the first hearing, right? And she kind of asked a couple good questions that went viral. And then slowly but surely, she became the face of it, which seeing her reaction and Luna's reaction after the hearing is quite interesting. And Burchett's, right? If you compare them all, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think more so where Luna seemed a little bit more bummed. Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, absolutely. She did, everyone was bummed, but Nancy Mace, who was running. Which, if it's your party, right? You're like, yeah, we're great. You don't want to maybe downplay it.
Well, I also don't think she's been. I don't think she's had her nose in it the way that those two have. Like, to them, it's like she reacted as if it was in the same way that we reacted to the first hearing, right? Because she was there, she was asking questions, but like you said, she wasn't driving it. And she seemed like, even the interview that I saw when they were like, oh, when Lou said that there was actual alien bodies or whatever it was, when the confirmation that it was actually aliens, she's like, well, it was a lot to take in. That's clearly someone who's just been diving into it the last 2 weeks, because all the stuff that he said, we heard, Luna heard, Burchett's heard. So to them, they're like, yeah, it's frustrating. Luna had said, it's frustrating. We're asking you these questions, and you're like, I can't answer. I don't know. I can't say that. It's like, well, why are you here? And that's what we said. Why are you here?
Exactly. And today, Askapol, Matt Laszlo, right, that you've had on the show, he reported that he asked Luna, right, about the hearing. I just made my video about it today. It just came out. She basically says, look, they gave us stuff before the hearing. Right. And then in writing. And then when the hearing comes, we ask them about that stuff. And they're like, we can't answer it. So she's like, what's the point?
What's the point?
What is the point?
Yeah, it's the Lukatsky stuff, man. So I was always, I don't think skeptical is the right word with him, because I happen to think he's the most credible out of all of them, right? But when he wasn't testifying at first, I'm like, oh, come on, man, why aren't you testifying? What are you afraid of? And it's no, and hearing his reasoning of you can't say anything. We can't, I have all these different things. We're not protected. We can't do anything. So it's not going to go anywhere. And he wasn't wrong. There's a lot of there's positives that came from it, and then there's the people who watch your show, the people who watch this show, they were more disappointed because they're like, what did this do? Because everybody was waiting for Lou to go, yes, there are aliens, there are these ships, there is this program. We can tell you where it is. We can tell you this. Here's some pictures. Here's this. That's what people wanted to see that are following our shows, but you didn't get that, and you kind of knew you weren't going to get that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, expectations were different, right? It was a spectrum of what people were going to expect, and it's a spectrum of what you think came out of it, right? Can you always find a silver lining in something? Well, sure, but what's the overall, overarching conclusion to the hearing, right? And you have to look at also what is the purpose of the hearing? Forget us, forget the public. What is the purpose of that hearing? What is the purpose to have those witnesses testify to Congress? Well, in my opinion, the purpose of these hearings and any hearings that take place are to activate Congress. That's the whole point.
Right.
That really has nothing to do with the public. And so I just looked at what did Congress think of this hearing? Because that's all that matters. If they're activated to do something else from it, right? They see enough evidence to push forward on something, and clearly they didn't. And clearly they haven't before, right? If you look at what happened with Grush and everything. So again, it's definitely about regulating your expectations and depending on where you were.
So you don't think they were motivated past this?
I mean, maybe can they still ride the high of the first hearing and this is the second hearing, right? Like, how long can this last? How long can these type of hearings keep going? Right. How long can we just hear, well, it helped destigmatize the topic? Well, to me, that's not what these hearings are for. Right. Like, I don't care if it destigmatizes the topic, and here, like, we shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars for that, because then it becomes, well, are we just going to have hearings to destigmatize any topics? Just whatever we want? No,
it's a good, it seems odd. I happen to agree with you, but I also see the other side of it where it's like, I don't want to keep doing these hearings to say people, oh no, this is real. It's like, we're past that. Right.
Yeah.
We're past that. But I do think that there is some merit to it where it's like, okay, the more you get the word out there and that slow burn of people going, oh, so I guess this stuff is real. I guess it's like, it's annoying, but it's like, it is a bit helpful with the public easing into, but I'm with you. Who cares at this point? It's like, we're at a point where what's the next move? And that kind of transitions us into the first story, I guess, which is James Fox, right? He's got the documentary with the program. It's coming out. And there were like, we knew it was coming out. There was hurdles and stuff that he had kind of getting there. There was some legal troubles and all this, and he finally did. And then he screened it for a whole bunch of people. So then it was like, okay, well, where's it going to land? And I was crossing my fingers. Okay, it's going to land on like Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Because if it lands on Netflix, then it's like one of these things, right? And they're going to promote it big. And I said, what I hope doesn't happen was that he makes a big announcement that it's on every streaming platform, but you got to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, looks like that happened. I think. I'm pretty sure. So this is the tweet, which was James Fox says, it comes with great pleasure to finally announce the release date of the program, which is December 16th. What a ride. Thank you for all your help and continued support. Please help spread this far and wide. And then he says it'll be released on Amazon, iTunes, Hulu, Vimeo, Google Play, Fandango, Apple TV, and many more. It's just one of many links. So this is one of those things where it's like, and then it's like $5.99, $10.99, which guess who's going to pay for it? Me, you, people watching this show.
Yeah.
But the people that you want to be, like, the way that I got into this topic, which I've told you many times, was that I was watching something on National Geographic through Hulu, Disney Plus, whatever it was, and it was a different tone. I paused it for a second. I will lie to no one. I was stoned out of my face, and I was like, and I'm looking, and I see UFOs exploring the unknown, and I was like, what is this? Is like an ancient aliens thing? And it was like, and I was like, oh sure. And then I was fascinated by the 5-part series that explored like the military side of it and all these different things that you'd been covering forever, but like those types of things. And I clicked on it because I didn't have to pay for it. I clicked on it because I was already subscribed to that. I'm not buying, and then I had never heard of the phenomenon or moment of contact, and it was Attack Peter who told me that. And then I found a way to go watch them, rent them and everything, because I was already invested in the topic. But Had I not stumbled across that through a subscription service that I was already provided, I wouldn't have done it. And that's, I think, is a deterrent for no one who's not into this topic is going to buy this.
Yeah, that's a great point and a great story. And, there's a lot to unpack there. Let me see if I can, spread this a little bit here. Like, especially kind of bringing up the point we were making before, right, about the hearings and destigmatizing the topic. Well, there was something I wanted to add that I didn't get to that will fit perfectly here, which is I'm all for destigmatizing the topic, but I think it takes place in podcasts, documentaries, shows online, like that sort of thing. Gets you interested, right? It gets the spark going. But more importantly, the best way is a disruptive way, right? An interruption into your normal viewing, right? And that happens by people going on podcasts that normally wouldn't cover that, or it's on National Geographic, or it's on this thing I can already click on, right? Like it's right there. So I agree. The program is going to have a tough time sort of breaking out of that unless the word spreads. But, my story of how Vetted started kind of is that way. I was not, into this, and we covered people that came to us like PR firms, and right, like, hey, there's this movie cut, So I saw Moment of Contact on a screener. I interviewed James Fox. I don't know anything,
right?
But I watched that film, and all of a sudden, I'm just like jolted, like, oh my god, I'm really into this now. I was kind of already, whatever, kind of like this is cool, but that showed up on my radar. So more like that. That's how it needs to spread out. So I hope James tries to get as many out of pocket podcast interviews rather than
the normal
just in pocket, right? I mean, as much as I would love it, that's what helps that's what helps move the needle, and that's what helps destigmatize the topic, which again brings it back to the hearings. The hearings are for some real shit to happen because it barely happens. So it's like a moment in time that we don't get very often, right? Every 1.5 years, like it cannot be to destigmatize the topic.
Yeah, and I think that you make a really good point that he's got to do different interviews in the same way that Lou did interviews everywhere when he's promoting his book, right? I had talked about, I had Jillian Michaels on my show, on my other show, had nothing to do with this. So she was talking about her new podcast, and the topic of UAPs came up, and she goes, "Did you see Lou's interview on Rogan?" And like, because she didn't even know who Lou was before that, and then and it was that by spreading the word that way. And so I'm gonna scale back on my comments a little bit, because I also think that look, James Fox has been on Rogan a bunch of times, and he most likely will go on again to promote this after this program comes in, and that will help the movie, and that will help. I mean, look, the reach of Rogan is, you saw it in the election. It is powerful. So if you put him on that show again, then maybe more people will check this out. I think it's more of a frustration that why all the crap and all the stuff that is on, whether it's Netflix and all these other things, that how important that this documentary could be, why they don't pick it up, and not
100%
and not crap, right? Look at George Knapp, who's obviously one of the most renowned broadcasters and reporters in this topic in general, has a whole series on Netflix. Why isn't George Knapp making a phone call and saying, "Hey, buy this guy's thing"? He just did like a 5-part series. Buy this guy's thing.
It could be, if you hear how George Knapp got that series, it's quite interesting, like that whole story. But James Fox, there could be multiple. I mean, you're going to know more than anybody. Like there's probably a particular journey here, right? The deal maybe that he maybe was offered a deal from a streamer, but decided, you know what, because that can come later. So he's thinking, I want to put it out, get the money, right? Because this is independently produced. So that's also like your game plan is going to be different to distribution depending on how you funded your project or film or whatever, right? Like, so that could have a lot to do with how he's putting it out, because I don't know, is it going to be rentable or is it just buyable first, right? Like you got to buy it for first 2 weeks, and then it'll go to renting, and then it'll go to streaming sometime in the spring or the fall. You know what I mean?
But you know as well as I do what will happen there. That would be an error, I think, because what's going to happen if he does, let's say, buy first, right? Well, guess what you and I are going to do? We'll probably buy it, but what will probably happen from most, not even pirate. We're going to be checking the Twitter feeds that cover it and all the snippets that they put out on their Twitter feeds.
Well, that's a good point.
That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at the stuff that really popped, that they watched, that someone who bought it said, "Hey, this is a big moment when this happened, and then that one is going to be retweeted, and then you'll cover it on your show, I'll cover it on my show, and that will happen, as opposed to if you're renting it, a lot more people will check it out. I hope they don't do the buy thing first. I think that would be a really big error on his.
I think so too.
Yeah,
that's a great point that you made. Actually,
yeah,
I agree with you.
So we'll see, but let's talk about more so about, I don't know. I mean, you very well might know the answer to this question. What are we going to see in this documentary?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you might. But what are we going to see in this documentary? Do you feel like interviews that we hadn't heard before? Is this thing going to move the needle at all, or is it just going to be another great movie by James Fox?
Yeah, that's a great point. And clearly that's subjective, how the needle is moved. In what way can it move a needle? Somewhere, some way, somehow. Yeah, of course. Will it move the most important needle, right? Which is government transparency and activating Congress,
right,
if that's their goal, right? With this particular storyline. That's a great point. It's, we know that there's going to be Jason Sands, who's a whistleblower that's already come out on Twitter. If you're deep into it, right, that's confirmed. There's going to be different former government officials who are talking on camera. Chris Mellon, Tim Burchett, Congress too. But there's also a few parts in the trailer that show this military ex person, right? So I think we are going to see some people. And that's what I've heard from people that have seen it. We are going to see some things we haven't seen before. How impactful that'll be is interesting. I've also heard this movie wasn't made for us. This movie was made for the general public to get caught up on Grush and everything. Does that make sense?
That seems to be everything. That seems to be the hearing. That seems to be everything.
Sure.
And that seems to be, I mean, it's in the same way that stupid ass fly. It's the same reason that when I was watching his documentaries, that as people have seen it before, but it's a great one. When I remember I would talk to Peter, it's a really good one, and I'd be like, oh my god, you want to talk about this? Dude, it's been out for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
and it's the
totally.
same. It's the same type of thing if they're going to do it that way. But I guess I just get the same frustration, Patrick, and where it's I want to have inside of this documentary that he went through legal problems and all these different things he's gone through, that it's hey, this documentary just broke the story that this happened, and just the lid just tore off this place because what he just put out, this interview that he just had, this footage that he just showed, it's what you were talking about before. It's expectations, right?
Yeah, it's expectations. I think he's covering some older cases too, and kind of updating some of that, right? Like the Calvine, and I think Kingman, and some other, events that are in the zeitgeist, right, of the UFO community. But it is called The Program, right? And it implies, right, this secret legacy crash retrieval and reverse engineering program that the government has been covering up, right? And was there more than one program, right? Is it the programs, right? Should there be an S? You got Hal Puthoff at the end talking, who doesn't talk very often about this. I don't know. It's just interesting.
I think that's what I hope, though. I think within this, because if he's gonna cover, because you look at, if it leads up in the way that the little things, the little puzzle pieces that have been happening from Michael Schellenberger releasing the name of the program in the first place, to that eventually leading to Schellenberger testifying at the second hearing with Nancy Mace then saying the name of the program with the "come at me, bro" stuff and all that stuff. It would bringing all of those as it leads. We're now hearing about Immaculate Constellation, and it's guess what? James Fox is not only covering Immaculate Constellation, he's going to tell you more things about that program than anybody has so far. You've got so-and-so who's worked on the damn thing. You got Mr. Shaded Face, Distorted Voice talking about how he's still working on the damn thing. And that type of stuff, that's what I'm hoping to get more of, that it then leads okay, we keep hearing about this program. What is the official say on the government now at this point? Because it's okay, we had a hearing about it where some of Congress has been talking about it. What is the answer to it? Is it going to be another one of these things and it drove me nuts, Patrick, and we can talk about this when they're at the hearing, when they were talking about, they mentioned Langley for a second, right?
Yeah.
And then it's hey, anybody want to talk about when the reporter asked the official government official about the Langley stuff and about what that was, and she said, well, they were non-threatening, so we didn't shoot them down. What does that mean that we're allowing non-threatening things to fly around Langley? What does that mean? No one asked that question. No one talked about that official statement that was given. How is that not brought up?
That's a great point. Absolutely. I have no idea why they didn't talk about that more. Yeah, absolutely. They should have brought. Absolutely. There were so many follow-up questions they should have had.
So many. So that's why I'm hoping James Fox kind of dives into that, because then it like leads to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing.
I don't know if there's going to be Immaculate Constellation stuff in there.
You don't think
that's
so?
Kind of what's interesting. Well, he locked the film already like months ago, right? Like, so, all of this updated stuff, is it going to be in there? I don't know. Or maybe, I guess. I haven't heard that.
Who knows? It was not coordinated. In that, Schellenberger had been hearing about these things and the ideas of whatever it might be, the actual particular, as it was leading up to what the name was, what it wasn't. I mean, whatever maybe not even necessarily the name itself, but like the fact that there is a similar program that, hence the program, So
yeah,
I don't know. I'll be watching it. You'll be watching it.
Yeah,
and I want to see, and we'll both be breaking it down. I'm sure for sure. I just hope that it's an actual. I hope something pops. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, me too. Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
We've got more stuff to cover, and I'm excited to do it. I mentioned to you the state I was in when I first found the documentaries, and I'll tell you, at the time, I wish I had Via. I'll tell you a little bit more about Via right now, and then we'll come back. Here it is. I don't know if you're going to find a bigger fan of Via than me. I found them recently, and I have been singing their praises ever since. And this holiday season, you unwind, you recharge with Via. It doesn't matter if you're enjoying a quiet evening at home or embracing the festive cheer. Via's premium THC and THC-free gummies will help you find your perfect holiday balance. Via is well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies. The best part is that Via legally ships to nearly all states in the U.S. in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee. There's no medical card required. I love Via. Good for concentration, great for sleep. I love the sleep one. It's the dreams. Amazing. I really enjoy Via so much. You can get yourself some peace of mind this holiday season. If you are 21 and over, you just check out the link to Via in the description. And for a limited time during the holidays, you get that 25% off and 50% off select items and bundles. So if you are hearing this ad post-sale, you can still save by using that code DTE for 25% off. But when you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. You have to support our show and tell them that we sent you. Tell them that DTE sent you. This holiday season, enhance your everyday with Via. All right, so thank you to Via. And I'll tell you the God's honest truth, something that we just cut out of the show because it just didn't need me to double it up. I was telling Patrick about how I was raving over Via. It is one of my favorite people I've ever dealt with. So get yourself some Via. It's amazing. All right. So we were talking about Langley and we were talking about those drones and other things too. There's a report from Sky News that came out. I'm going to play this and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Here it is.
All right, I want to bring you a couple of lines of breaking news. And first, some updates on the news that we brought you a little earlier about the United States Air Force reporting a number of drones had been sighted flying over some US AF bases here in the UK over RAF Lakenheath, Mildenhall and Feltwell, the US AF have said. Now, the update is that our Security Defence Editor, Deborah Haynes, speaking to sources, has been able to find out that 60 British troops, counter-drone specialists and others have been deployed to help defend those air bases following what has been described as a spate of weird drone sightings. The personnel are going to also support efforts to find out who is operating the drones, as there are fears that the mysterious flights might be some part of some sort of coordinated operation. So a number of drones were spotted flying over these RAF air bases, but operated by the United States Air Force, Lakenheath and Mildenhall in Suffolk, as well as RAF Feltwell in Norfolk. And now we can report that the British military has drafted in around 60 troops, including people who are experts in counter-drone activities to try and defend those air bases. There is a sense that it might be part of some kind of coordinated operation. So the Ministry of Defence saying they're taking the threat seriously and they are supporting the US Air Force response.
Okay, so there's just more reports now. It seems, I think it all ties into what we've been talking about this entire episode so far, is that the stigma seems to be going down more and more people are reporting on it, more people are talking about it, but the overall story is so far that, and I don't think this is new, that there are other governments working in tandem with each other to figure out what the hell's going on. I just think it's becoming a little more public now, but I think that's always been going on.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this whole drone story is quite fascinating, to be honest with you.
It doesn't go away. It's like the never-ending story. It keeps like coming back, and it's like, what? I feel like, dude, this is going to be the biggest part of the puzzle. Is this whatever the hell this thing is?
That's interesting. Definitely a big part of it, right? For sure. Absolutely. I mean, if you notice, it's so close to the water.
Yes.
Right? Like easily accessible from a boat to get a drone out, or just people messing around. I don't know. It's tough to say. It's confusing, to be honest with you, because you're getting conflicting reports. What's happening? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, what do you think, though, when it comes to these things? Because, as I mentioned, the most telling part of it, and I cannot believe that it was not covered more. I really can't. Is that when those two reporters, and God bless them for both asking the question about it and getting that answer of like, well, they weren't hostile, so we didn't shoot them down. Well, what does that mean? How that's not investigated every day and talked about every day and not asked at every freaking news conference or whatever too. It's like, can we go back to the fact that the answer was that there was not, what does it mean? If it's not hostile, then you kind of know what it is then, right? If it's not hostile, well, it's not from another government, because if it was from another government, and anything in our airspace is hostile because you're not supposed to be there. So unless there's a new thing, it's like, you know what? As long as you guys are, you're just taking pictures for potential like parties for kids. Okay, yeah, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter where you are. Just come on in, Putin. Yeah. It's like you're not going to do that. So it's like so that is out. That's out of the question. It's not another country. Balloons. Well, yeah, balloons aren't they're friendly balloons, but the other side is, what are they? Same balloons keep floating around for 13 days. Just floating around. So no, they're not balloons, even though they're not. What does that mean? It's like, how do you continue to follow that up? What do you mean by that? Because I think that, I can't remember what the woman's name was who answered the question, but I think she was so thrown back by those questions and the reporters asking him that she was like, oh, well, that's our official answer. Bye.
Absolutely. Well, what do you do with this like news about these? I mean, they're calling them drones. It's happening in too many places to just ignore. I agree. Something over Langley. Oh, well, we'll just let it go. Right. Just non-threatening. I still think it could be a foreign government.
So you still think it could be foreign governments, even though 13 days or whatever it's doing, they said non-hostile. You still think so? How so?
Well, they said non-hostile. Right. So
but why would you let other governments fly over our airspace?
Who knows, man? I don't know. We're doing it over other governments' airspace. We don't hear about our stuff getting shot down. Like maybe there's some sort of agreement.
But you're talking about two different things. You're talking about flying over airspace and then hovering for 13 days, going. Hey. It's like if our stuff was hovering over foreign governments, if we flew stuff into, and let's say in Iran, and we're just flying over the base for 13 days, just hanging out there, they're gonna let us. Oh, the U.S. wasn't being hostile. They'd be firing rocket launchers at us.
I guess I haven't heard the 13 days straight same object in the sky story part of it. I don't know if that is the case. Yeah, that's odd. I guess what is the other implication? These are UFO craft going to monitor,
or it's technology that we have that they, that wasn't supposed to be recorded for as long, because it was outside footage that was coming in too, and it was like maybe because I think there's a lot to this anti-gravity stuff. I think there's a lot to all of this stuff, that there's other technologies, and I think it all loops back into the programs, the reverse engineering. In my heart of hearts, I really do think, and this is like, I try not to give, what do you think? Because what the hell do we really know? But in my head, I'm going, I do think that we recovered stuff. I think that we definitely recovered stuff over with Roswell and other times, and tons of other places, and I think that if you listen to the stuff that Lakatsky and Stratton and all these other people talk about. They've been working on it. They were able to access it, and I think that throughout the years, throughout the decades, they have turned certain technologies that we use today, I think, have been influenced by shit that we found. And it is stuff that I think continuously, like there's other things that, think about types of technology that were introduced into the marketplace. You think that that was created about a week or 2 weeks beforehand, before they hit market? No, it had been out for years that the people were trying shit out before they finally said, okay, now we can release this to the public and tell them what the hell this is. And I think it's the same type of, there's shit, and there's also stuff that that's not anything to do with reverse craft and things that have been invented that we'll never know about.
That's interesting to think, like, that we're being influenced by alien technology, our society, right? They kind of dripped it into us, and we slowly become more alien-like because we're using their technology, right? The internet, social media, AI, mobile technology, right? Fiber optics, right? Like all these different things, whatever, antennas, even our propulsion systems,
right?
Who's to say that isn't based off of, right? They're like, oh, you got to start here before we get you to anti-gravity, and they help with that. Like, I don't know. That's kind of an interesting idea that we could actually be very reflective of what alien civilizations are like, or at least primitive ones, right? We're not that far off because of where our inventions and technology has brought us.
Like, what did we find, and from what we found, and through those programs and the stuff that we did, that we have been working on, like what did we find, and what were we able to do with that, if anything at all? Maybe the answer is nothing, but I don't know. I just and as I mentioned beforehand, I mentioned Stratton, right? And that's a name that keeps popping up. And we mentioned the George Knapp documentary. He popped up in that one on Netflix, and then he had that whole, and you probably know this better than I do, but him and Lou had a kind of a falling out during the summer, the last couple of months, right?
Who?
Stratton and Lou, right? So they had a falling out, and then you knew that Stratton's book is going to come out soon, and that would probably do the same type of, I mean, you would assume more, depending on what he reveals, right? Or you don't know?
I think Stratton's book and him coming out and doing an interview, like, I think that's, I don't know. I'm really looking forward to that, because I think he's going to say a lot of things that are different than what's been said.
Like what?
And that could go, well, like changing different narratives that have already been set, whether it be, hierarchy of power, different events, different details about what happened with programs and what they actually uncover, like how far things went. So, how far the holes are, right? Like they more shallow, more deep. For instance, to say like, oh, we've reverse engineered stuff. We've worked, we've implemented these things. Hang on. That's not what happened. We got craft. We just couldn't figure it out. Right. And we're at a deadlock, because in my opinion, you don't give up alien technology unless you have done reverse engineer. So I don't see these aerospace companies wanting to give this up, and I don't think they have, because they haven't done anything. If they have, they would share it, but they haven't cracked it, so they don't want to give it up. Why would you give it up?
What do you think? Makes no sense. What do you think about Lakatsky saying that they did breach the hull of that one ship?
I mean, that's interesting for sure. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't mean anything at all, really. It doesn't guarantee that
the hull. The hull of what?
Right.
What do we mean the hull? How many layers are there? Right. Is there what do you mean by hull breaking in the hull? Like, what are we talking about?
They got in and they looked around. Doesn't mean that they actually were doing anything.
And to be fair, the actual details of that story, and someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but Lakatsky never saw anything. And the whole story in the book is him telling the story in a congressional staffer's office in D.C., telling the story of we broke into, we breached the hole. We got it. That's it. That's what's in the book. Him telling the story, not the story of how the UFO got broken into, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I thought so.
And that's quite different.
It is. And it's another one of these stories that I heard from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from a guy. But I remember him saying it on the Jeremy Corbell show.
Yeah. Weaponized. And that's what they say it. That's how they say it.
Yeah,
they specifically state it that way,
okay.
not the other way. Now, Jeremy tries to get him to say other things and pushes on him, but he never
really does it. All right, well, we were talking about Stratton, and as I mentioned, his name just keeps popping up more and more, and one of those people that mentions his name is, if you watch that second hearing and you've been watching, hearing more about the USO stuff, then you know Timothy Gallaudet. And so Gallaudet said this, and I want to play this clip.
This is not our tech. I knew it wasn't China or Russia tech because I'd been reading all the threats. I had secret access program access, and I knew, okay, this is something different. But I couldn't say much about it, and I'll talk about that later because I stayed in government. But ultimately, I found out later, I know what happened. That email was wiped from my computer the next day, and my boss and the operations officer never talked about it in different meetings. How did that happen? Because this gentleman in charge of the UAP task force at the time directed that the email be taken off because that he wasn't sure if that was U.S. tech or not, as Leslie mentioned. Jay Stratton, he led that task force, and he actually that little symbol in the middle, he just got an award this year for leading his effort to investigate UFOs by the current director of national intelligence, which is quite astonishing. It kind of reveals this sort of fractured nature of our UAP policy right now, that he gets an award, but we don't talk about it. I don't know what. So that's a whole other thing. But that email was wiped from my computer because Jay directed it so, and they were trying to investigate. Is that U.S. tech, adversary tech, or something different? And ultimately, I've communicated with Jay, and we realize now it was not U.S. tech, and it was not adversary tech. It's something different, and we don't know what it is.
All right, it's a crazy clip. It's a crazy clip. Like when you're talking about, like, this is why I want to read a Jay Stratton book, because it's like, hey, can you talk about that, or at least see him on more interviews? Because someone going, well, what about that Gallaudet clip where he talked about how you ordered it? And it makes sense, right? If he's investigating this thing, he's like, hey, wipe it off for now. We got to find out, are we releasing stuff about the government, releasing this? And then to collaborate with Gallaudet again down the line to say, no, that was something else. And we know that it's something else. What did you make of this clip when you saw this?
Yeah, I mean, I covered it on the channel for sure. I found it quite fascinating, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of threads to pull here. One is, when did Tim Gallaudet find out that information? That is the key point to me, because if he found it out after the hearing, that's one thing, right? So that's basically, there's a 7-day window from when that video you just showed is filmed and the hearing. Right, it's a 7-day window of him the Explorers Club. That's where that was. And but if he knew it beforehand or for years, right, that changes things. Why wouldn't Tim Gallaudet mention that in the hearing? Stratton is brought up other times, but not, that, because the narrative is that there was some nefarious reason that it got deleted, but in reality, it was pretty standard. Right. Jay Stratton asked, hey, delete it. It's probably our stuff. We're going to delete it. So there was no, but if he knew that and didn't testify to that, but still told the same story, I don't like that.
Yeah. I mean, the question is, right, it's all about timing of when that was.
Timing.
For sure.
Exactly.
But it just shows you again, to just jump back to our first thing we talked about. It's that and this is where you and Pavel have said this to me many times over, and I've pushed back to you guys, like, you don't think that Congress is really the way that it's going to happen. Congress isn't really, you can't trust in these people to make it happen. And I'm like, well, it's for me more so of them bringing it to the forefront, and they're the ones that are going to make it seem legitimate. But I'm starting to just jump back on the side of you guys of just like, it just seems like a circus, and it seems like the way that they're trying to run things sometimes, like, some of these people didn't even know there was a hearing until like 3 days before. Some people didn't even know some of the names of some of the people, the players. It's like, how much are they really invested in this in general? It's like it's in the same way that I brought this up, and I think I said the same analogy to Attack Peter when he's on the show. But like, it's like when somebody's running one of the big companies, whether it's Marvel or DC or Star Wars, whatever, who do you want in the head? You want someone who knows the lore, who's really is good business sense, but also really knows the lore, wants to tell the stories, not just some corporate head that's just trying to make $1 million, because then you're going to dilute the property, and you can tell that the person doesn't give a crap. Hence what's happening with Lucasfilm right now, right? Now, when you look at this hearing, you're like, well, wait a minute. Are they just, obviously you want a spotlight on you if you're a politician in anything that you're going, because who the hell knew who Burchett and Luna was until this, right? They didn't. They were kind of just not well-known people in Congress. Okay,
yeah,
fine. And now the line's being shut. I'm going to talk about it more because this is my thing. And I think Nancy Mace is pulling on that thing too. Like, oh, people really enjoyed this. There's a line around the hall in order to get into this thing. Oh man, I'm gonna really show you guys that I'm really excited about this. Except what's the guy's name? He's an Admiral Tim Gallaudet? No, Gallaudet. Oh, sure. And it's like, it just who's running all this is. That's why I feel like I don't know. I can't. You can't trust anybody. But I want to continue on with Stratton though, because his name's coming up again in this story that I sent to you. All right, UAP James tweets this one out, and that is that President Trump received a UFO briefing from former UAP Task Force Director Jay Stratton. That's what Dr. Eric Davis at the Soul Foundation said on November 22nd. So this is another look. You know, because Trump has talked about it in every freaking interview that brings this up. You know, he knows more than he's saying.
Sure. About
this stuff in general. And the fact that Stratton and these guys have been talking to him about it. Stratton's briefed him on it. It's why before, when you talked about that there might not be any movement after the hearing, the reason why I'm almost contradicting myself with what I just said is that before the election, it was clearly going back to a bipartisan thing. And it was, okay, your team, our team, we'll see who wins. And now one team has won. And now the question is, if that team is indeed empowered, don't they want to be the team? And I hate that we have to call it teams, but that's what it is right now in this country. It's teams. And doesn't that team want to be the team that's the disclosure team?
Yeah. I look, I've always said the best way to get disclosure from Trump, pretty simple. Feed his ego. Tell Trump this, you will be the greatest president, right? You will be remembered in history for the rest of time if you're the president that discloses we're not alone in the universe, right? And confirms it. There's no question he could ride that wave for eternity. I mean, literally a legend, right? It would outdo MAGA and everything. It would be such a pivotal moment, and that, you know, video or photo, right, of that moment.
You're the fucking president that said aliens are real.
Yeah, bro. It's like there's no. That's how you. If there's something going on, that's what you tell Trump, and he's gonna be like, "Get X in here. Why? Let's figure this out. Because if this is real, I want to be the guy to say it." Right. I don't. I mean, that's how we should be appealing to him, in my opinion.
Dude, I'm sure that conversation has been had, and I'm sure that because if you believe some of the other past reports, is that he was trying to get this stuff out there in his first term, and that he was trying to push this forward in his first term. Now, whether or not that's true or not, who knows? But if you listen to Burchett, and Burchett's like, oh, he's going to make it happen. Now, of course, he was saying that before the election, so to appeal to people who this is their topic, in the same way that you would appeal to people who, whatever, arms are their topic of choice. Like, you appeal to them in the same way. You know what? I'm going to appeal to the UAP voters. It's the only thing they're going to vote for, and I know they listen to me, and I'm going to tell you that my guy is going to be the guy. So I didn't take any of that seriously, but now. Start saying it now. Let me see you taking meetings with him and talking about this, right? Let me see. Sure. He's going to take he'll take a meeting with Luna. She's attractive, so Trump will
absolutely.
He's like, I don't want to talk to the Tennessee guy. Let me talk to to Luna. Luna's will get it done.
That's funny.
But either way, it's like there's all these things with disclosure of what's going to happen, and you mentioned the quote that came from that about Trump was Eric Davis. So there's a whole big thing with Eric Davis, and we can kind of close out on this one. And so this this is
problem with disclosure.
Yep, this is kind of summarized with Joe, the UFO Joe. But this is now the hang up that prevents full disclosure, the evidence that you demanded from Eric Davis. He said, what's holding up disclosure? Davis seems it's from this is a Facebook group he used to belong to, and he says that Grush reported to the House Oversight Committee last year his DOPSR approved unclassified synopsis of his classified whistleblower complaint to the IGIC circa July 2022, which itself contains TSAP special access program information that is exempt from FOIA, which no member of both houses of Congress can get access to except for the, what does that say? Bicameral gang, by the Gang of Eight.
Bicameral,
Thank you, by the bicameral Gang of Eight. I was one of the witnesses in his classified complaint, and the contents of his classified complaint contained direct first-hand evidence from Dave's security investigation that discovered the existence of the legacy UAP crash retrieval program. So you are woefully uninformed about actions and events which took place during 2020-2022 that are not in the public domain, so your commentary is uninformed. The evidence, so to speak, is not releasable by federal laws under the Title 10 and Title 50 and a few POTUS executive orders. There are also contractual issues between the USG agencies and the industry firms that are involved in all of this, which cannot be legally breached to publicly disclose the evidence you desire. And you witnessed in December how the Schumer-Rounds amendment to the FY24 NDAA got pushed back from the House leadership and the White House, to where the amendment got watered down via the removal of two provisions to prevent the executive branch from exercising those now deleted provisions to avoid violating those government agency and contractual legal protections. This is now the key hang-up that prevents full disclosure of the evidence that you demand. Okay, so this is why I jump back to what I brought up with you and Pavel. This is the type of stuff that makes me realize nothing's ever going to get done there because there's just too much red tape.
You know what I hear? Excuses.
Yeah.
That's what I hear. I hear more excuses that the XYZ can't happen. And it's frustrating because, look, I'm not a legal scholar, and I bet even legal scholars would argue over that statement from Eric Davis. Eric Davis is not a legal scholar either. And if that's what's hanging up, then what is the point of anything?
Right.
What are we doing? Period. Why is that not the only goal to break that? Why is that just now being brought up at the sole support? You know what I mean? Like this is it. This is what's holding. Like why are we focused on anything else then? It doesn't make sense. One, I don't know if I buy that.
You don't.
That's true. Yeah. I can't confirm that. How do I know?
Right.
I don't know if that's true.
But you don't like the way it smells.
Well, absolutely not. And legally speaking, there's always ways around everything.
Sure.
That's one thing I've learned, right? Like legally speaking, there's always a way. You get the smartest lawyers, and there's ways around it.
But wouldn't the pushback on that be that there is ways to do it, but every time that we try to do it that particular way, we're met with, because as you know as well,
that's fair. Met with some pushback or whatever.
Because more power, sure. More money, more power, and
sure.
if the people that don't want this out there if they're able to say to, hey, Mike Turner, do me a favor, we pay for your campaign, they need your vote, they need you to
sure.
so squash this. And it's like those movies you see where the billionaire has all the cops in his pockets, and it's like, you can't run this is Redstown, and it's and this is like Red is essentially Lockheed Martin and all those other places, right? So it's like, okay, look, they can't get that information. Why? Because we have it all tied up in this legal documents. They can try, but let them push it forward. They keep trying to push it forward. Yeah, but we implemented that back in like 96. There's no way. They'd have to go through so many loops and so many holes and so many different things. Now they think they're going to do it. Let them try. They can't, because we have this lockdown that we had so-and-so put in there with this, and this. So it's just like a long game type thing that you can see happening. It's why I start to say, where I am tired of hearing it, but of the like, well, if they don't open the doors, it's going to be the hard way. And it's like, well, that was 2 years ago, and nothing.
Yeah. You
got one jellyfish video out there that people just don't even say is real. So it's like, so what's the hard way? At this point, dump it all.
Yeah.
You got it. Show it. You know what I mean? Like, walk in. You got a 12-inch penis. Show it. It's like, let's walk into a bar.
I'm talking about it.
Yeah, you walk in the bar. You're like, oh yeah, I got a big one. And it's like, no, you don't. Oh, it hit the floor. Okay, let's get out of the bar. It scares me. It's an arachnocondia.
First of all, who walks into a bar and that's the first thing they say before they even order a drink? Hey, I got a big one. The door just kicks open.
Someone you don't want to mess with. Someone who's either full of shit or someone you want to get out of the way of. And if that's the case, let's do it, man. Let's put up or shut up at this point.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah, put up or shut up. Bring the evidence. There's things keep getting extended, right? It's the same old story, right? Things keep getting extended, kicked down the line. The new date, even Lou Elizondo is saying, is 2027. Just a couple more years,
right? And then it'll be 2053,
But
and then it's 2030. Right.
You can just keep kicking it.
Yeah.
You set things so far in advance that, especially with how the public is, we move so quickly on things.
Yeah.
Right. We forget in 2 years,
100%.
6 months, even.
Right.
It's like,
well, it's like, look, there's a lot of stories that have been, I can't remember what point of the year it was, but there was like nothing going on. There was like a story or here or two, but then as you started to hear more about the hearings and other things, it started to light up. And now there's like stories and other things, and people are talking about it. This had this, the Soul Foundation thing and all this, but the big events that kind of happen, right? There's like these, since if you backtrack this to let's say last year, the first big event really is Grush coming forward, right? So Grush coming forward, leading into the first hearing, and then leading into, I guess, Lou's book, right? Leading into the second hearing. Well, no, let me rewind that a little bit. I think the information about Immaculate Constellation is pretty big also. So I think that comes out right before the hearing. Then the hearing comes out, and then James Fox's documentary, and then the question is, what's the next thing? Is it just a bunch of other stories? Because in the same way that Nancy Mace is a new player, we need new players in this game. It's like, do I respect George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell? Very much so. I do. Even though I think Jeremy was a little over the top with saying, hey, guess what's going to happen? This is going to change the game. It didn't change shit, right? But you can't. It didn't change anything. He was out there talking about the whole world's going to change, and it didn't. But it's also you can't disregard what he does for the community. People shit on the guy all the time, But
absolutely,
he works. He's pushing. He's pushing really.
He works hard. Absolutely,
very hard.
100%.
But there needs to be new players in the game, and there's a caveat to that too, is that not only do there need to be new people who are talking about this and people with higher audiences and people who can get the word out, there also needs to be the acceptance from the Jeremy Corbells and other people of guess what? This isn't about and I'm not saying that Jeremy does this. I'm just using him as an example. But hey, lights on us. Don't put it on anybody else. It should be. And you and I talk about this all the time. We're on the smaller side of things of what you and I do. But I'm talking about what happened if Jimmy Fallon starts talking about this thing, right? Hey, the NBC's gonna be like, you're fired. We're gonna find someone else. But you know what I'm saying? It's someone with that kind of massive audience says, we need to talk about this now. That's the kind we need. The players need to change in the game. People have to, instead of them thinking it's kind of this niche, cool topic to talk about, they need to take it serious.
Sure. Well, that's the out-of-pocket, to bring it full circle, right? That's the out-of-pocket sort of podcast and media presentation we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, right? With James Fox and the program. Yeah, I agree, man. Getting it out there and spreading it that way. Also, there seems to be two parts to this. There seems to be this sort of narrative potentially to how they're trying to even release the public information that could be public, right? Finding right times to drip it out. And it's there's two layers of gatekeepers, right? With some of these people in this community, which is odd, right? In my opinion, right? That needs to be gone, right? Because the bigger this bubble, right? The second part of my thing here is the biggest, this bubble grows in interest, right? In UFOs. As that bubble grows, well, more people are getting involved who aren't diehard alien UFO believers, right? So critical thinking, skepticism is going to be higher than ever, right? People are going to be asking for evidence, but really digging into details, where when it's smaller and more niche community, it's easier to sort of control that information, that narrative. And as it grows and gets out of the hand, right, and people just start covering it and doing whatever, that's where we'll really start to dig in more, in my opinion, right? But we also have to be prepared for that and be accepting of some of the pushback and kind of pushing through. But I agree, just getting it out in different ways, more creative ways.
More people need to be talking about it. I mean, it really, and I think that there needs to be some kind of big event like the Grush thing, because the second hearing it wasn't as monumental as the first one. It just
No.
wasn't. Even if it did get people talking about it, it just wasn't as
The election had just happened, right? This massive one of the
ever
biggest elections ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just boom. It just
and
dust in the wind.
I had talked to. I mean, there were a couple people that I was just curious. People who pay attention to politics and everything and the news. And I was at dinner and I said, what did you guys think about the hearings the other day? Like, what hearings? I said, exactly. I didn't even go into it.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, what hearings? I said, exactly. I said, the fact that, that this isn't covered is a freaking joke. And I always preface that by saying, it's not a matter of saying, okay, you know what? Everybody should be covering this because this is real. No, people should be covering this because there's implications that this is real. And the fact that there's people talking about it in front of Congress, that there's freaking, otherworldly ships potentially under oath. It's a story to where the type of stuff that these news organizations debate in these crossfire settings compared to this topic is insane that they don't cover this. And this is what I've been saying since the day I started this channel. And I hopefully that changes in the next, 2 years, but according to Lou Alzado and everybody else, it'll be 3,347.
Yeah. Look, man, the last thing I'll say, give it to the youth. Get the youth involved, right? Like, you get kids involved, teenagers, the youthful community, they start spreading that shit on social media. That's a good way to really spread it out, in my opinion.
I think that actually did happen with the hearing. I think that the TikTok generation kind of got a hold of it, and that's how people just started to play into it. But I think that is very important. But we are not the two Utes. We're just two guys doing some videos. But Patrick, I'm glad that you were able to make it on the show here today. Where can people find you? Vetted.show.
Our website will take you everywhere, but you can just find us on YouTube. Search Vetted. We come right up. Boom. VETTED. And do a daily show every day about 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And cover, UFOs and all this, right? That's it.
Well, we loved having you on, and we love to have you guys with us. So make sure not only are you subscribing to Patrick's content, make sure you're commenting on this video. Thank you for being here. As always, please check out our sponsor. You're going to thank me for it, honestly, especially that Christmas deal for Via. So make sure you check out Via today. And that's it. So appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the flip side, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, man.